Today's show was recorded live at Paradiso, North Charleston's premier family-friendly social club. Dine, swim, and vibe with Paradiso. The restaurant and market are open to the public. For hours and membership inquiries, go to paradisochs.com or call 843-885-4663. Welcome to the Shrimp City Report. My name's Devin. I'm joined with our co-host.
Hey, it's DJ over here.
And we're joined with a special guest, a kind of bon vivant of Park Circle in North Charleston, South Carolina, and a good friend of ours that is well-traveled, wine expert, music expert, likes the wrong football team, but I'll bust his balls about that later.
Yeah.
Stephen, how you doing? Stephen Bates.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good.
Thanks for having me out tonight.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been on my calendar for a couple of weeks. I've had sleepless nights.
It's okay. Well, this Shrimp City Report is more of a chat talk of interesting people around town. So that's kind of why we had Stephen on, because we have known him for years, and very engaging and eloquent person, as well as very knowledgeable about different subjects. So now that I've blown all that sunshine, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? That accent sounds, you're from Mississippi, is that right?
Deep South, yes.
Yeah.
Originally, I was born and bred in Liverpool.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to talk about exactly where it is and you're taking a snide at the team, if you put a pin on my house on Google Earth and you drag it to the hallowed turf of Liverpool Football Club, it was a mere 4,666 feet away. So I can't help where I come from, Dev.
Oh, that's good.
Wow.
I could only help the man I become. You inspire me, though.
Oh, yeah. I'm an American Southerner that adopted West Ham, so I really have I have no rock to stand on here.
But man, that must have been amazing, just being literally a stone's throw away from that culture, like the whole football culture, and being like, Liverpool's huge now, you know? I mean, was it always like that?
Well, when you're in the thick of it, right? When you're in that zip code, you have to think about the surrounding areas. So we're very, very close to Goodison Park as well as to Anfield Road.
Yeah.
So growing up, I might have had a girlfriend whose father might have been an Evertonian. So we just have to live together.
Right. And Everton is near, or in Liverpool as well.
Yeah, the grounds are only split by a small park, Stanley Park. It's not too far away. But it's certainly a big part of people's lives growing up there.
Yeah.
You know, you're passionate about your team.
Yeah. I think pedestrianly, folks, when they think of Liverpool, they're going to think of soccer, or they're going to think of the music that came out of Liverpool. There was a significant band, the name escapes me, that came out.
Dead or Alive?
Yeah. Rest in peace. Rest in peace, Pete. Yeah, the Beatles and whatnot. It's interesting. It's like, you know, certain towns and certain areas, regions define themselves by, you know, something like, that's what we'd know. If you look on if you're on The Price is Right and there's a question or something, it's going to be, you know, those two things, maybe football and soccer. Growing up for you in Liverpool, how was it? And also, where's it located in England?
It's in the northwest, just above Wales.
Okay.
It's 45 minutes drive down the East Lancashire Road to Manchester. We're actually, we're closer to Dublin as the crow flies, DJ, than we are to London.
Okay,
wow.
So just to give you some perspective, like if we go back to the 19th century, before the post-industrial revolution, Liverpool was a major port city. And so, therefore, we attracted the Celts, the Irish, the Scottish, the Scandinavians. Liverpool has a huge tradition of railroads, and the Chinese built it. And the Chinese are the oldest Chinese community in the UK resides in Liverpool. Not the largest now, but certainly the oldest. Well respected.
Wow.
We have a delicious Chinatown in Liverpool. I do miss it. So
I actually don't think about that. You think about how the United States was built on Chinese labor and whatnot. So that's, I guess it does get around. And Liverpool is that a port city?
Yes.
Okay.
And you're always making fun of my accent, but I want to just give you some insight maybe. So maybe the accent is an amalgam of the Irish, the Scottish, the Celt, the Scandinavian.
Right.
So it's a strong brogue, they say, singy-songy, as they say.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and it is, I mean...
Listen, a Southerner making fun of someone else's accent is the funniest thing that I can think of.
True that.
But everyone's very parochial. So if you think about before the steam engine, everybody lived in their small knit communities that cooperated together. You don't have to go very far down the road.
Yeah.
Where the inflection and the dialect will be slightly more nuanced and different, which,
Yeah.
Well, is it kind of a nitty-gritty working class area, or what can Liverpool or that area be cosmopolitan?
So it was a traditionally shipbuilding port city.
Okay.
We talk at the bar, we talk about the sports rivalry, but let me give you another little bit of perspective that you might not know. We have the Manchester-Liverpool connection, which is always as tough as, for the example, like the Yankees and the Red Sox. We have that rivalry. But if we go back a couple of generations, we had an economic rivalry. So they used to ship in the goods into the port, into the River Mersey, and then we would move it down the River Mersey to the Mancunians. But we would add a tax onto that. And therefore they were disgruntled that they would have to pay an extra tax because they had to handball Liverpool.
Oh, yeah.
So those clever boys in Manchester, they undertook the largest civil engineering project in the 19th century and built the Manchester Ship Canal, which completely bypassed the River Mersey.
Wow.
So they just we're just going straight here. We're going to take a right turn and we're going to go straight to the ocean and we're going to bypass the Scousers.
That's some good old spite right there. Yeah.
So we have a political rivalry. We have an economic rivalry and a sports rivalry. But I think, though, today, if you look at the old guys that were in the bands of the 80s and the 90s, I think today they've made a lot of peace with each other. And there's a lot of mutual respect amongst the cultural arts, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, what was the 80s like? And I guess what was schooling like there for you coming up?
Well, my mother did something she should not have done. She married a Protestant and she was a Catholic from staunch Catholic. So you were either Catholic or Protestant, proddy dog. Can't say that. But so when I came along, my father's like, well, what are we going to do with him? And she's like, oh, he's definitely going to go to the Catholic school. Because historically they were more serious about their education, maybe a bit more strict. And I might not denigrating the Protestant schools.
Yeah.
But there was a very high quality pass rate amongst the Catholic Church because there was nuns and priests and fathers and strict, your archetypal strict headmaster.
No, definitely growing up, I've always whenever I hear about Catholic churches, all I think is this strict, strict, whole deal. Yeah.
Ultra structured.
Ruler to the hand.
Yeah. Just knocking you around the whole time.
And when you say cosmopolitan, I think they have always been cosmopolitan in their outlook. The people of Liverpool, they've always had an international outlook. They've always been experienced to many different cultures. It was maybe in the 1950s, I think the West Indians came, maybe some Ugandans came. So there was always a sprinkling of reggae going on. There was always a little flair for food in the city, in the pockets of, So I think diversity has always been part of Liverpool life.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to. I assume when you're living in a port area or a area near the water that a lot of people go through.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that you're in, well, technically part Europe or whatever you consider it.
Yeah.
I know you're a little closer to Ireland and other places up there, but did you still travel Europe as a kid? Did your family take trips? Did you stay in the UK mainly?
Well, we were so poor, I had to go to work before I went to school.
Okay.
I mean, that was my
Okay,
situation. It's a working class town. It's certainly not rich. You mentioned the Beatles. They were from South Liverpool. It was a little bit more affluent in that area. I was in the hood.
Yeah.
But I got a good education, enjoyed it. In terms of travel, I always aspired to travel. I came across this flea market one day, and I can't remember how old I was. It might have been about 11 or 12 years of age, maybe a little younger, actually. It might have been about 8. I came across this huge map of America. Must have been like 6 foot wide by 6 foot deep, and it was a map of America. And I thought, oh, I'm going to have that. Carried it all the way home, threw it on my wall with the tacks, and I'm like, oh my God, what is this place?
Yeah.
Because I was always fascinated by geography, inspired by stories that I learned at school. And then I'm looking at the map of America and I'm like, okay, what is this? Arkansas? Okay, no. Arkansas? I'm confused.
Yeah, I mean, there's 50 of them to learn, I guess, or 48 in the continental. But it's the same with us looking at Europe and European maps, and you probably do a lot better. Even then, you probably did a hell of a lot better at the picking out states or the regions of the United States than most Americans do with picking out anything in Europe.
I'm a visual learner.
I mean, there's something to be said for that. And did you, being a visual learner, were you attracted to the arts in school? Did you,
No.
I know you have a vast music knowledge. Were you into music at an early age or?
Yeah, well, I always lived vicariously through the artist, the musical artist. I'll never forget being blown away by, analog synths. I remember Gary Newman. I mean, I remember David Bowie. I was fortunate in the sense that I had some cousins that were much older, so they all had a diverse collection of soul, rock, pop. So I was always exposed to different genres of music, and it, like any young person, I suppose, because we didn't have streaming, we didn't have the digital age. So you would attach yourself emotionally to certain bands, certain songs, and you would live with them and learn them, and you would grow to love them and treasure them. So iconically, Liverpool has a rich heritage of great artists, and I got out and about, knocked on doors, and I saw a lot of live music when I was younger.
That was a particularly great period because you had Manchester right near. So, the freaking incredible bands that came out in the 80s out of that area, and then Liverpool. And so did you see Echo and the Bunnymen? Did you see bands like that? So
I remember seeing this flyer for Echo and the Bunnymen, and I just laughed at
hilarious name.
At the name. It said, Echo and the Bunnymen, what a stupid name. And I saw the flyer, and it says live at the Student Union Hall in the Liverpool University. And I'm like, well, he looks like he's got some attitude, this Ian McCulloch fella. Let me go and see what it's all about. So I went after school in my school uniform with my friend Pedro Purcell, and we gate crashed it because we were too young or illegitimate to go in. Because we weren't part of the university. But I blagged my way in. I gave the guy a £5 note to get in, right?
Which was a nice chunk of change back then.
Yeah. You could buy 2 albums for that.
Right.
So I got in to see Echo and the Bunnymen, and there might have been 40 people in the room, and I was right up close front, and they'd only had Crocodiles out at the time.
Wow.
So it was raw, it was live. And
so good.
They were learning their trade, but they were electric. Will Sargent, he was a cool mofo on that guitar. He just stood there, and he just didn't have any facial expressions, and he just stood there and played, concentrating, I'm sure, because his riffs and his passages are very complex.
Yeah, and they're very stoic live anyway, so it would be pretty cool to see him with just 40 people in the audience, and whenever that was, the first tour. Yeah, that album cover too is fantastic. I love that thing.
So I went to school as well, DJ, with a girl. Okay, so when you're in the high school, the last year of school, the three or four Catholic schools amalgamated together. So I ended up being in my last year of school with like two co-ed schools would get together with one single like female school. So the boys were outnumbered like 3-1. So I found myself in my last year with a class full of girls, and I sat next to this girl, Michelle, and I never met her before. And we became fast friends because we shared like 3 lessons together. So Michelle says, and I kind of had an eye for her. And she was charming. So I said, what are you doing this weekend? She said, well, I'm going to go to the Royal Court. My cousin is playing in a band. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. All right, well, have a great weekend. So me being proactive, went and got myself a ticket, bounced down to the Royal Court Theatre on my own and started dancing right at the front of the stage. And I saw Michelle and she's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, this band is my favourite band. I love these guys. Never heard of them before in my entire life. It was a flock of seagulls.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Fantastic.
So they changed my perception of what live music could be too as well.
Yeah.
They had a beautiful synthesis of keyboards, electronica, and just beautiful driving rhythms.
Yeah.
They were tight.
It is. And they could write a damn pop song. And I don't mean that derogatory. I mean, they wrote nice melodies and catchy music.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, we could talk for hours about the possibility, that whole area.
So,
and not only just locals, but who was touring.
Yeah. So you're living in Liverpool. You got a giant map of America on your wall. At what point were you just like, I'm going to give this a shot? And did you just basically throw a dartboard at the map to see where you stick?
I never had any intentions of moving to America. I always romanced about it, but I never had any intentions of moving here. I was more apt to go to South Africa.
Okay, yeah.
My elder cousin, she married a diamond merchant in Durban. And so we were pen pals. We used to talk a lot on the phone. So I had this imagination of moving to South Africa, really, because I was inspired by the movie Zulu and a few other things.
Yeah.
So and I've got some wines tonight I want to really just briefly talk about as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
Yeah, so I think it was, I grew up, the thing about growing up in Liverpool, you tend to be in a community, and I had a lot of friends who was fast friends, and you keep your friends for a long time. So one of my best friends growing up, he just said, hey, listen, I want to go to Boston. And I'm like, why? He's like, I've just come into some money. Well, sad story, his mother passed away. He came into some money, and he said, I'm a huge Red Sox fan, and I've followed every episode of Cheers. I want to go to Boston.
Why not?
And he bribed me. He said, I'll pay for your ticket if you get your spends. So we went to Boston. I got off the plane, and I'm like, fuck me, this place is awesome.
Right.
So at that time, though, I was in my early 20s.
Perfect time.
Yeah. But I was in the wine industry. So
you were already in the wine industry by then.
Okay, yeah.
Can we backtrack a sec and talk about how you got into wine industry in England and then ended up, and did that have any bearing on your fascination with South Africa, or was it just you wanted some of that diamond money?
Something like that. The diamond blood.
Yeah,
money.
I hate to bring up, a sad situation, but yeah.
No, so what the difference in the UK maybe than here, the educational system, they force you to choose a career whilst you're very young, DJ.
Wow.
They're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm like, well, what can I do?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you're never going to be an engineer, Stephen, because you're shit at math.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but you're bright in other areas, so we really don't know what we're going to do with you. So because I was brought up, as you might say, as an underprivileged child, without and my younger brother, who's done very well for himself today, we grew up poor, but I had to cook for myself. So I was always inspired by culinary shows. I always wanted to cook for myself. So I said, I'm going to be a chef.
Yeah.
Now, when I was 7 or 8, when the map was on the wall, I wanted to be a long-distance lorry driver in America.
Yeah.
But the reality of it was, I think I could be a chef. So I went to culinary school, flew through that, got the grade A's, got a job working in one of Liverpool's finest white tablecloth, few-star restaurants. And I was working under a chef from Strasbourg. He was in his 50s, late 50s, early 60s when he took me on. I was only a child, just out of culinary school, 19.
Wow, so he saw the late 40s, 50s, 60s cuisine. Like, that's badass for Europe.
But he was a master patissier as well as a master chef. So he took me on. He paid me nothing, hardly, but I learned a lot. And chefing or culinary was something I loved, but it wasn't naturally gifted at it. I worked with naturally talented chefs, but if I ever achieved anything within the brigade in the kitchen, it was just because I applied myself through
just tenacity and
blood, sweat, and tears.
Right.
But the one thing I did have an ability to do was I was a quick learn, and they would show me how to do it, and I could do it. And I knew how to denature wine. I had a good sense of smell and taste, and therefore I could always execute the mantra.
That's hard. DJ, young Dev made a banging sauce bercy last night, like a velouté that was, fish with shallots and stuff.
Yeah.
And that was fantastic. And cooking with wine, I think, is very challenging. I've had many fails with that. So
yeah, it's the French cuisine can be complex, but once you understand it, it becomes second nature, and a lot of it is a derivative upon a derivative. Anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
Well, okay. So I admire that you your steadfastness and I think, and I try to. Gosh, who am I going to teach? But even the folks I work with, I'm like, there's nothing wrong with going up and saying, can I try that? Can I have a chance? Or it's not about me, but when I was young and working in restaurants, I was a dish dog and then peeling shrimp in Charleston and saw a sous chef making some stuff. And I was like, I think I can do that. Can I try it one day that dude's off? And they're like, yeah, what the hell?
But it was so antisocial.
Yeah.
Because these guys were pretty dedicated. So you would get up in the morning, get downtown, open up, do your prep for lunch.
It's a tight ship from what I've seen. Yeah.
You'd finish your shift, your lunch, you would go home for an hour, and you'd already felt like you were battered.
Yeah.
And you'd be falling asleep on the couch, and the alarm clock would go off to go back and do it all over again at the night time to do the a la carte.
Yeah.
So you got your bones that way.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I travelled around. I went to the Isle of Man. I cooked in the Grand Hotel in the Isle of Man.
Oh, wow.
I went down south. I worked in a large hotel as a sous chef, eventually became chef de cuisine in East Anglia. So I tried to get around and about, and I enjoyed it. So I tried lots of different types of chefing jobs around the US, around the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So traveling was always something I'd like to do. But I came to the conclusion that I was always interested in wine, and symbiotically, the food and the wine would always pair together. And I'm like, I don't want to be a chef. It'll just kill me.
Yeah.
And it was so antisocial, and I was so gregarious. I just decided I needed to redefine what I did. So I got a job DJ in a hospital.
Okay.
Working on the culinary line. Oh, it was soul destroying.
Oh,
how bad.
But it got me out of the kitchen at 2:00 in the afternoon, and I went to night school, and I went back to university, and I got what's called my WSET diploma in the study of wine. And from that springboarded me out of the culinary into the wine business.
That's such a, I guess, hard thing to understand, working in the line of a hospital food court.
Yeah, and then
go into like getting your wine degree, for a simpler term.
I was feeding patients on the line.
Yeah,
it was tough.
That's crazy.
You know what? There's so many stories of folks that have done those kind of jobs and gone to school or doing stand up on the weekends. And then they're stars or whatever, or at least they follow what they like.
Yeah.
So
I'll just be brief. Once I got that WSET diploma, I went on vacation. No, sorry, I got a job working in a beautiful wine merchant under some masters of wine, and they took me in. And it was good. I worked with a lot of women in the wine industry in the UK, and I always reminisce about the good times I had with these girls. So these girls had the WSET diploma, and I'm going somewhere with this because of accent on wine right now.
Right.
I deal with a lot of women, and they've got a great keen sense of taste, and their palate is good. And my theory was, like, when we were doing all of these wine tastings under the master of wine, under the tutelage, the ladies that I was working with, the young women, they were no more experienced than I or no more certified than I, but they would get the wine descriptions more accurate, and they were able to identify the wine better than I.
Okay.
So here's my theory on that: why women are better. than men at tasting wine. And I take it back to prehistory.
Mm-hmm.
When we were hunters and gatherers, the men would be out there with their flints and their stones, and they would be taking down the animals. But it would be the women who would be the nurturers, and they would have to touch, taste, and smell everything, as to not introduce toxins into their babies.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When did civilization go from eating just to survive to eating because it's pleasurable, or it is almost recreational? You think that's an industrial, or the Romans, or Epicureans?
I mean, like Greek and even culture like that ate for pleasure, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. The Dionysians, the Epicureans.
Yeah. It's just some people didn't have that privilege of eating for pleasure.
I guess you're right, because there probably was only just a few people that could eat for pleasure, because ergo money.
Yeah.
And agriculture also.
Yeah, sure.
So was it, it's for the uninitiative and to people who don't know much about Europe and where you were traveling while you were learning about wine, is there a big wine industry? Because when I think of Liverpool, I think of beer. Was that, or did you go to other locations? I guess
It's a good question, DJ. So I always get a hard time from Americans saying, the British food sucks. You guys don't even know what you're eating. How can you even do that dish?
Yeah, so unfair.
We have a stereotype that the British cuisine is not good for you.
It's like pub and fish and chips is a stereotype, right?
English breakfast.
But I might defend them a little bit.
Uh-huh.
You have the Piggly Wiggly supermarket over here.
Yeah.
That would be closed down in 5 minutes flat if it was in the UK. On bang to rights hygiene violations.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I would say that living on the doorstep of Europe, the British, they get access to all of the Mediterranean produce that comes directly to their shore, to the markets, because as you know, the UK, it doesn't have that Mediterranean warm climate. Most of its agriculture is root vegetables, apples, orchards. We don't have it's a moderate climate.
I made a joke, but being on the ocean, fish does take a big part of your whole diet too, right?
Well, the British are snobs in the sense that the good stuff they'll send to France, like the shellfish and the seafood. The shellfish and the beautiful mollusks and the stuff that the British won't eat, they'll send it off to the French, and they'll come in and trawl for it themselves.
What's up with them not eating shellfish?
Well, they eat a little bit of it, but there's a lot of stuff that the British, if it's not white flesh, fish, lobster, they'll eat a few oysters and that. But the majority of the ocean catch around the UK waters gets exported back to Europe.
I read the book Cod recently, so just the history on cod and through history, and that was of course very British, North Sea and stuff.
I'd like to defend the British housewife one more time. They in the supermarkets, because we are on the doorstep of Europe, we do get all of the wine selections from all around the world.
Right, yeah.
So I would say that the average British woman, housewife, is much more savvy when it comes to wine than the average American woman. And I really do appreciate the way the Americans are keeping an open mind.
Yeah.
And they are actually becoming interested in wine and they want to learn. So it only bodes well. I mean, I only remember like 10 years ago, I would mention the word rosé and people, they'd put the crucifix up as if I was saying the wrong thing, but the times are changing.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you go to the grocery store, they have every type of wine that you need now, Yeah. And
I see rosé was big, Chardonnay was big at a certain time, Pinot Grigio, and they're not, I'm still recall in the 80s when White Zinfandel just was the biggest phenomenon in the whole world of drinking in the United States. Because
your grandparents drank it.
Yeah, but you're also used to just Gallo wines, maybe some Lancers, stuff like that. People weren't the United States wasn't that fussy of a palate. You probably had an advantage when you came over and went to Boston straight ahead, because they probably had a little more of a sophisticated palate or wine drinking. Like we're about to taste some wines that you brought to us. I guarantee you, we're going to have you walk us through it like we're elementary children.
No, not at all. I think you both got good palates, but you do drink a lot of beer, the better.
Yeah, that's mostly it. So do you want to take a look at, or you want to try one of these wines real quick? And then we can
talk more about
Boston and
America.
how you got to Charleston.
Okay.
Cheers.
Okay, so the first wine that I've brought today is from South Africa, and it's called Bayade.
Okay.
Now, Bayade translates in Zulu to "Hail to the King," and if we look, DJ, on the label, it looks like a shield.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
So spear and shield, which is the classic Zulu form of defense. And we have on the top of the name Bayade, above that looks like a royal crest.
It does, yes.
And then it's called the Prince. The wine's called the Prince. And it's a Cabernet Sauvignon. But we also can note here, it says by appointment to His Majesty King Goodwill Zwethelini. So the King, Goodwill Zwethelini, he resided as the king of the Zulus from about 1968. And sadly, he died, I think it was a couple of years ago, March the 12th, 2021. So through my connections in Boston, I managed to acquire this wine. And if we note, there's a little bead around the outside of the neck here. On the neck, there's a little bead. And this string of beads is made by the Zulu women.
Oh, wow.
So this is by appointment. Now, the king doesn't make this wine. He goes to a local cooperative, I'm sure, who makes the wine under his jurisdiction. And he solicits so many cases per year. When the wine is made, they make a Merlot, they make a Cabernet. When the wine is made, the women of the tribe take the beads and they make the necklace for the neck of the bottle, and then they put the bead on the bottle. And in the Zulu tradition, the women of the tribe, they don't have free speech. They don't have many rights. They are second-class citizens. Now, they're very well respected, but it's very much a male-dominated culture. So after the wine is made, the king allows the women to go around all of the bottles and put their handmade bead on top of the neck. And this is a job for them that they're employed to do. And the king, when he sells it to us, so when he sells it to me in the United States, I overpay.
Yeah.
Just so you know, a little bit overpay.
Right.
But the good news is the profits from the wine, he takes a large proportion of the profits and gives it back to the women in the tribe.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And it supports rural development and economic development in Zululand, which is north, south, east. It's like the bottom right-hand side of South Africa. Very small municipality.
Wow, that's great.
So the king, I never spoke to him directly, but his personal assistant, his PR people that I've been in contact with, and they said to me, this is a couple of years ago, they said, Stephen, the king is very happy that you're supporting him in the United States of America. He wants to extend an invitation to you to visit whenever you like.
Oh my God, what?
So that's awesome.
So as a wine importer distributor, because I have access to many different wines, I choose this wine because I have that romantic South African notion in my brain, but it's also the fact that it helps a small tribe. Yeah. So I'm trying to be ethical in the wines that I try to purvey.
There's such a story with that too. Listen,
at this point, I'm just like, you sure you want to give it to us?
Of course. Should we try it?
Let's try it.
Yeah.
Then we'll talk about telling stories. Okay, red wine, taking a little sniff. What should I be catching on the aroma?
Classic Cabernet Sauvignon notes of cassis, black fruit. When we think about fruits, we're looking at dark fruit, black fruits. When we drink Grenache, might be more red fruit character.
Okay.
So, and this one here, you can tell it's from a cooler climate because there's a little savory note to it. It's different than an American wine. It's got a little bit of terroir. You can tell it's from a small farm, small cooperative.
Well, it's definitely delicious.
Yeah.
It goes down easy, which is the most American thing to say about wine, isn't it?
It sees only about 12 months of oak.
Yeah.
So to soften the tannins, to give it a little bit of complexity.
Mm-hmm.
This is delicious and all. So 12 months of oak. So there's, how long do they usually keep wine in the barrels to do whatever it's doing? It's not like
depends on the
years, is it?
It depends on what the winemaker's trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got high quality grapes, you can ferment them in the barrel. You can make the wine in a stainless steel and then transfer it into the barrel for an extended period of time. Just depends on what the winemaker's looking for.
Yeah. It's funny. We recently had a podcast with Bourbon Culture.
Yeah.
They talked a lot about how they use oak barrels for bourbon too. What is it about that bourbon or about that oak flavor that just pairs so well with alcohol, no matter what type you're drinking? It's interesting.
So there's different types of oak, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
So we have American oak, which grows much faster than European oak because it's a little warmer over here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at say a 60-year-old oak tree in America, it's much bigger than a 60-year-old oak tree in Europe.
Yeah.
So the American oak, we tell how old it is by the bands in the wood.
Mm-hmm.
So the American oak is much more aggressive with what's the natural the natural particles in the American oak are vanillin.
Yeah.
It's natural in there. And it's much more aggressive, and it'll impart its character much more aggressively and much more quickly into a bourbon or into a wine. But the European oak, the grain is tighter.
Mm-hmm.
Still the same chemical formula, but it'll impart its flavors much more subtly.
Okay,
so I like American oak for bourbon.
Oh, really?
I like European oak for my Burgundy.
Yeah.
And my Bordeaux.
Yeah, and so the barrels from Europe that made the wine, there's a lot of beer makers now and bourbon folks that want to use those to instill those. Yeah, that's fascinating. And I think as a wine expert, so Stephen, he also works at Accent on Wine, which is, an institution in this part of North Charleston. I have to give props because it is probably the most comfortable place I've ever had wine, in that it is, number one, it's inviting.
Yeah.
The decor, it's not any kind of, too fancy or too anything. It's very sublime. And I'm a proud person sometimes, but I don't mind parking up there and saying, I don't know what I want. Go ahead and go.
It really is a friendly atmosphere where if I go to a wine bar, most places, I feel like, one, I'm going to be paying an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
And two, people are going to look at me like, you don't belong here. You don't know what's going on here. Get out,
It does. That culture seems very challenging to customers.
And that might just be an American thing, but I don't know.
We don't try to be pretentious. We don't have to be pretentious. We just want to make the customer feel like they can be who they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to learn and talk about the wine, we'll try and imbibe some information. But we try to keep it casual, relaxed, fun, and informative. But I'm always getting into trouble because I push boundaries. That's the problem.
Everyone on Accent is fun. Stephen's, like I said, he's basically a star around here.
Not true.
Yeah, I'm a great judge of all things. So, but what I'm saying is, repeat customers in any business, whether you're a cable company or a wine shop, is so important.
So I do care about my customers, and I do try to work hard for them. We don't sell liquor. I know we enjoy liquor, DJ, but we don't sell liquor at Accent on Wine because it would invalidate our ability to retail wine, and that's really where we want to make our money, is by retailing wine.
Yeah, you can't. There's a thing about that.
So if you went to Accent on Wine and got a cocktail, we wouldn't be able to retail wine on that license.
Really?
Huh.
I didn't know that.
So that's when you go to like a bar or a pub and you can get a liquor drink and you can get a glass of wine, but you can't buy wine off the shelf.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, y'all have a better setup because How many people just pop in after work and are like,
So
what do you
demographic.
suggest?
So because we don't have liquor, another theory of mine is that we don't get no dickhead guys in there.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
We don't get no drunken idiots in there.
No college
Yeah.
fraternity people coming in.
So 85% of our customers, I would say, are women.
Mm-hmm.
They're all kind, generous, live in the community, support us, want to dialogue with us, and we enjoy them. We have a laugh with them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is hard to come by a good place to buy wine that's, where you can get an opinion. You go to the grocery store, you're basically reading off.
Forget it. Yeah.
You want to know a little bit more. So having a person on standby to talk about that's great.
Yeah. Then honestly, there's even any kind of market like that or establishment. And if there are people that are sitting at the counter having some wine, I mean, there's been many times I've asked, how is that? I'll have some of what they're drinking.
And the thing about Accent on Wine, it's small family-owned operations. There's 4 locations now,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all doing quite well.
That's good
great.
to hear.
Yeah.
Because Charleston has become, it's growing so much and it's growing so out.
Yeah.
Even since, how long have you been in Charleston?
Yeah. We I think we skipped ahead.
Yeah.
What was the transfer between Boston to Charleston?
So I went on vacation.
Yeah.
I started writing letters to wine importers in the States. I still lived in the UK. This was 94, 95.
Mm-hmm.
I started writing letters, faxing. Telephone conversations were very expensive in that day. So I got a job offer from a large import company. It was the Gallo Import Company.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That was the largest.
Yeah, they're not the largest because they're stupid,
Yeah.
and they're not the largest because they have the best sales strategy, marketing strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So I got Gallo boot trained as a salesman. So my job every day, and I didn't really focus on the Gallo because my wine knowledge was a little stronger than most people's, DJ. So they put me on the fine wine team and threw me to the wolves. And my job was to go out every day and sell fine wine to hotels and restaurants.
Wow. Okay.
And it was like commission.
Yeah.
I'd take my bag out and be like, hey, chef, recognizing your restaurant as Zagat rated #1
Mm-hmm.
French restaurant in the city, I'm completely inspired by your mantra. And I would show them that I've done some research, and he'd be like, what's your name? Stephen from Commonwealth Wines and Spirits. And he'd be like, get the fuck out.
I was about to say, was that a tough sell? Because going to these like big restaurants and being like,
At the back of a house for restaurants
that's-
is a murder house usually.
yeah, I can't imagine. You must have.
It's just cold.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I'm used to getting what's it called, rejected now.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like I don't feel it anymore. I don't take it personal.
No, I mean you must be like numb to it after like the 3rd attempt, with this selling wine to chefs. Yeah,
But you just wear them down and you go back and say, look, chef, I've costed out your wine list.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you've made on your current list. This is what you can make with me.
yeah,
I think I can still align your aesthetic and your quality by working with some of these brands. You want to take a look, how much more am I making with you? Well, look, I can make you 10, 15, 20% right here. And he's like, leave that with me. I'm like, no.
that's what I was about to say. Was anyone ever like, hey,
Sit down.
let me try a bottle?
Yeah, let me take all the work that you just did. Leave it with me.
No, so it was a slog, but the people of Massachusetts get, you call them massholes,
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah.
but I never found that. I found them to be quite smart, passionate about their sports teams,
Yeah, absolutely.
very knowledgeable,
Mm-hmm.
cosmopolitan, and I thoroughly enjoyed engaging. It was tough, but once you got in and built it,
Mm-hmm.
it was a good up.
It's a tough nut to crack. That
Yeah.
is a region that
We
is
have a guest.
very tough. Come on in, Madeline. You're now on the show.
Good afternoon.
So my wife, the Charleston famous artist, Madeline Dukes, just walked in. We're tasting. Stephen poured us some very fancy South African wine that, if you want the story, listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
So the king passed away. And his his son, Mizulu, his son is now the king of the Zulus.
Oh, okay.
now.
So you still have that hookup.
Yeah, so we're still going to, maybe towards the end of this year, we'll put another order in for him for a few hundred cases.
Yeah, and if you need to go over there, DJ is a good salesman, so maybe you could go there.
So is he still keeping the tradition alive too as well?
Yeah.
Okay, great. That's good to hear.
When you say King Zwetholini, he was only a ceremonial king, but he kept the cultural morals and the cultural histories alive. Yeah. So he was a good king in that. He didn't have any political power, but he was a moral king.
That's such a story with the Zulus, South Africa, the Dutch, the wars, and that's all within the last 120 years that all that went down.
So when I say the king was a moral king, he was a moral king, but he was against the ANC. He did push back against all of the ANC, and actually the king's brother married Mandela's daughter Zini.
Okay,
so he bypassed the ANC. So the king and Mandela actually did have lots of conferences together about the political situation in South Africa.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, we're not going to get into politics or anything, but I think equilibrium is one of the most important things in, cultural loggerheads or whatever. So we'll just stop it at that. Yeah. But it does make for a rich history of South African wine as well, because I do remember when some of that started coming out. It was, I think, mainly white wines that I was seeing, maybe in the 90s or whatnot. So in the 90s, you're in Boston, you're slinging wine, you're doing well.
Lived with the Blue Man Group. Got to see.
Yeah, that's right.
Wait,
tell us that story really quickly.
Yeah. So I just, living in Boston, obviously it's all the smartest kids in America go to Boston. Yeah. You've got MIT. My landlady was like, she said she invented the internet at MIT. She was an older lady.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She showed me all of the things that she'd done. So I surrounded myself with lots of smart people, learned a lot whilst I was up there. You got Harvard, MIT, UMass.
Definitely. You had all the smart people there. So.
Yeah. The symphony orchestra was incredible.
Did they act smart? Were they still kind of cool to be around?
Are you asking if it's like, what's that movie called? With the janitor?
With the Ben Affleck and...
Not Mark Wahlberg, right?
No, not Mark Wahlberg. Ben Affleck. What was the... Good Will Hunting.
Good Will Hunting.
Yeah. Where they're just math genius janitors in every... school or whatever. No, when I went to Boston recently to see Madness, everybody was just, they were great, They were a little, and I don't think I have a pronounced Southern accent, but man, they will pick it up.
It is
very
interesting,
quickly,
though, like you mentioned, MIT and all these, like a wellspring of education. But when you think of Boston, you think of like the harsh, beer drinking culture.
White collar, yeah. I mean, not white collar, blue collar, firemen, a rich tradition of punk rock came out of Boston. So, I mean, you have roughnecks and sophisticated people. So
the Pixies.
Yeah.
They were bigger in the UK at that time.
Yeah.
Than they were in the US.
Right. Because in 4 AD broke them, which was, the epitome of shoegaze, or getting, towards that lush, My Bloody Valentine. Yeah. But I digress.
Yeah. I saw Prince when he was alive. I saw Bowie.
See, those two right there are just that's clout.
Yeah.
I saw Depeche Mode like 10 times there. I saw Oasis a few times. Mm-hmm. If there was a band playing, I go and see them. I saw the Bunnymen 3 or 4 times in Boston. I saw Dave Gahan on his solo tour.
Man, Depeche Mode, especially before the arenas, that would have been special to see them. So Boston, of course, had a great music scene. Growing up in Charleston, it was miserable. No bands ever came here. We had to travel to Charlotte
or Columbia, right?
Columbia, Atlanta, something like that. And it was just miserable. There was no college radio. There was nothing. It really was everything that you think about in the South. Leonard Skinner songs, the Leonard Skinner cover band at the beach. Leonard Skinner ended up moving into it felt like moving into the back of our house. You know, it was just that when you were if you were into alternative or punk rock or new wave or something, it was impossible in the 80s in Charleston. So then one thing that we bonded over, or a band that is obscure, is Japan, that you just happened to be playing them once in Accent. And I was like, holy shit, I haven't known a person that liked this band in 30 years. So
I stay faithful to my drugs.
Yeah. So anyway, so you had to come to Charleston for what?
There's always a girl involved, is there?
I guess so. And that's part of the story. So we might as well go ahead and explore that, you know? Or that's all you need to say.
I guess, did you know about Charleston beforehand?
One of my friends was traveling around the world. Good friend of mine, English friend of mine, who I met in Boston. He was a few years older than me. But us expats will get together and stick together, DJ, because the Irish boys had their group. And there just wasn't many English boys because you won't give us a green card. Fact.
Really?
Yeah. Can't get a green card if you're English.
Yeah.
But I got mine.
We're still salty about the tea.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it must be something.
That war and everything.
Yeah.
Insecure men.
That's why we made our own dictionary. So
changing the how you say words in America just to
legit. They did it despite
fun
the
fact.
English.
We did that just to get you mad.
Yeah, that's true.
So he was traveling around the world and he came back to the States and he's like, "Oi, Batesy, I'm in fucking Charleston, mate," in his London accent.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What are you doing in Charleston?" He's like, "Come on down, mate. It's fucking awesome." And I'm like, "Okay." So I took a little vacation, came down here. The skies were blue. The weather was beautiful.
Yeah, and there was less stuff on top of you, spread out. I'm sure that was a big change from Boston.
I did a little research. I went to the Department of Revenue when I was on vacation. I got a lot of information from the Department of Revenue. I spoke to real estate agents. I looked at the Census Bureau. I noticed, I was looking at planning and I noticed that Boeing was coming in. Bosch was already here. Yeah. I'm like, this place, BMW is about to take off in the upstate. I'm like, this place is about to go upwards. So I thought, I'm not going to stay in Massachusetts. I'm going to bend my broken heart and check out South Carolina. So I came down here and, it gets small some days, doesn't it? You can get it, but you can get on a plane.
Yeah.
Going from the gregarious Boston salesperson going out and about. I mean, you don't have to make a decision in Boston till you're on the train.
Right.
But down here, it's like, oh, what am I going to do?
It really is. And it goes back to your United States map thing. A lot of people don't realize that the distance between places in the United States.
No.
It's not like where you can go to Spain and say, well, I'm going to drop by Belgium and France while I'm here.
Well, tourism in America, one of the most confusing things apparently for people that come in is they'll come to New York and be like, well, we want to take a day trip to Texas.
Yeah.
And then maybe pop down in the Ford.
Yeah. And it's like, it really is. It's like when they have the World Cup here, I'm like, it might as well be the World Cup because it's basically a quarter of the world wide.
Yeah.
So.
I've done a couple of road trips in America and I don't regret them. I thoroughly enjoyed them. But you're wasting your life in the car.
I agree.
It's like I drove to Colorado. It was fantastic.
You get into Charleston, it's slower paced, whatever. Do you jump straight into more whining?
So I tried to get a job with some of the distributors down here because a lot of them were part of my network up there in sense of they would have the same portfolios. But there just wasn't really nothing going on. So I struggled at first because it's hard to find a job in Charleston, especially if you don't want to be in a restaurant.
Yeah.
For my background. So there were a few of the local importers and distributors that I was speaking to. This is before I had my licensing.
Okay.
What year was this?
2008.
Okay.
Okay.
And so they got me, they went to Whole Foods Market and lobbied for me to get a job as a regional wine buyer for Whole Foods Market.
Oh, wow. They thought that much of you. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was nice of them. So they were like, hey, there's a guy in town. He's from Boston. He's got the proven track record. We've seen his resume. I know you need a buyer for for Whole Foods. So I was there for a few years. I enjoyed it because it exposed me to the South.
Yeah.
And I had a large checkbook, so everybody wanted my attention. So I got to meet a lot of people. I got to taste a lot of wine. Again, still
Kind of getting like that Southern profile too,
Yeah.
like what I guess is expected of Southern wine. Yeah.
Yeah, or what we drink down here. I guess that's a big learning curve.
Yeah, well, the first thing I did is I kicked out Yellowtail, right? You know that swill?
Oh,
Yeah.
what a phenomenon. Come on, talk about a phenomenon.
Yeah. So this is why Australian wine has such a poor reputation at this time, because of things like Yellowtail.
Yeah.
New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs, I'll always still be a fan. I think they're consistently good.
Yeah.
I have a joke about them. They smell like cat's piss. You can always tell them in a lineup blind. You can always smell.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I'm going to try that next time.
Yeah.
Luckily, our listening audience there's not a lot of Australians yet.
Yeah, well, I did spend the month of April last year in Australia. That was a good time.
Oh, hell yeah.
I went down to the Margaret River wine region. Did you offer me a PBR earlier?
Yeah, I did.
He did.
That is a reflex.
Yeah.
Because I've been known to drink PBRs in the mill.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Because it's low in alcohol, and at that time of the night,
it is. It's a fishing beer, like all the great ones from Wisconsin: Schlitz, Goebel, Schaefer, Hams.
Ton of people drinking PBR at the fishing film festival.
We went to the Fly Fishing Film Festival recently. So Total Wine, then
Whole Foods Market for the wine.
Whole Foods. I'm sorry.
Yep.
So, damn, Whole Foods has got a discerning customer base, though. That's not like you're just selling to Sam's or Costco or something. Those people, I mean, the place is expensive, you know?
It is. But I got into trouble because I changed up the status quo. So as the buyer representing Whole Foods Market, right? The store manager, he gets paid on profitability of the store.
Okay.
So he was looking at my numbers and he's like, oh, I'm not even going to bother talking to Steve. I don't need to worry about him because my numbers are looking good in his department. So what I would do is I would go around the distributor, go directly to the importer, go to the winemaker and say, hey, I want to get your Einaudi Dolcetto d'Alba, but I want 100 cases of it. And the guy the winemaker would be thrilled.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Small production, family owned, delicious. Wine needs to taste from where it comes from. It needs to taste from the place where it comes from. So I would always find my motto, my tagline is like wines of place. Wines are made in the place where the grapes are grown. That's where the wine is made. The winemaker then can make the wine, but it's got to taste like it's from the place where it comes from.
Interesting. There's a lot of consumers that are pedestrian that wouldn't even think twice about that. Like what the other wine that you brought today, where is that made?
This is a Tempranillo from Familia Valdelana, from the family Valdelana, and it's from Rioja, which is the northern part of Spain.
Okay, so it's Spanish wine.
Yeah. And it's a crianza. So firstly, Rioja is one of two DOCs. So it's Dominación de Origen Calificada, and the other DOC, Dominación de Origen Calificada, is Priorat. Now, there is another region in Spain that I love called Ribera del Duero, which is quite west in Spain. It's close to Lisbon, and that really should have a DOC.
Yeah.
But it's not.
So that's what DOC is, a specific...
So So there's two great regions according to the Spanish authorities. One is Rioja and one is Priorat.
Okay.
But Ribera del Duero is only a Dominación de Origen, but I think it should be a DOC because I love that region the best, and the wines are the longest lived in Ribera, and they tend to be extremely modern, fruit forward, and I've always enjoyed those wines. But anyway, this is a Rioja, and it's from Familia Valdelana. These guys have been established in the old town of El Ciego, which is one of the oldest wine-producing villages in the northern part of Rioja. And the Familia Valdelana can trace their lineage back for 200 years.
Wow.
And I've been selling this wine for 10 years. This has been, since 2013, I've been selling Familia Valdelana. I'm intimate with the family. I know them quite well. And so I've always been a fan because I'm a loyal small production family farm type of purveyor. This is a Crianza. So in Rioja, the law is like this. You have Vino de Mesa, table wine. You have Crianza, Reserva, and Gran Reserva in ascending order of quality. So this is a Crianza. And in order for Mr. Valdelana to obtain his Crianza designation, he has to hit some legal requirements or some minimums. So by law, this wine, just let me check the vintage. It's a 2017 vintage. So the wine was made in 17. After the wine is vinified in the tanks, he has to put it into wine barrels.
Right.
For a minimum of 12 months. But Mr. Valdelana ages his wine for longer than 12 months, and it's a combination of 50% American oak and 50% French oak.
Oh, okay.
And then so half of his harvest will go into American oak, half of his harvest will go into French oak. Then after about 14 months, he will blend the two wines together, right?
Okay.
He'll blend them back together again, and then he'll put them in the bottle, and it has to be in the bottle for a minimum of 1 more year before he can release it. But Mr. Valdelana leaves it in the bottle for 2 years before he releases it. So he more than qualifies for the designate of Crianza, because if you age a wine for this amount of time, it can only be made from quality grapes.
Yeah.
Right. So we're talking about older vines with lower yields. So you get better grapes. The better the grape, the better the wine. The better the wine, the more aging potential theoretically we can have. So this is the Valdelana Crianza, and I'll let you try it, DJ.
Okay, yeah.
So I like what Mr. Valdelana is doing. The two oaks, aging it longer. It's like he's sitting back there going, "I'm really going to f with those blind tasters, and see what they pull out of this."
Yeah. Wow, that's really good.
Wow, this is good. This is
really good.
It's so bottle aging. Sorry about that.
okay.
So bottle aging, I think Americans don't understand. Not all Americans, just generally speaking, I think we miss the point that if you leave a wine in the bottle and it becomes more the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
Because you're in the absence of oxygen, you're in an anaerobic situation, and what happens is the big chunky molecules of tannin will grow old, like any molecule, like any cell will grow old. And as it grows old, it falls apart or becomes weak. And this autolysis, this flavor profile that it throws back into the wine adds complexity to the wine. So we can drink this wine now and we're like, oh, this is really good because we've got browning on the edges, we've got some complexity, we've got bottle age. So it's smoothed out and it's much more rewarding at this point.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of like a misconception with a lot of people who were introduced to wine. Because you always hear, the best wine is aged. And people assume, at least most Americans do, oh, I've got a 2017 bottle. If I sit on this for 2 years, rather than, it's been released,
or whatever,
drink it now when it's ready to be drank,
Yeah.
Should wine or alcohol, we had a discussion the other day, should these bottles of certain booze be a trophy that no one ever enjoys? I mean, what are we doing here?
Well, the bourbons and the whiskies don't improve in the bottle.
Okay, the wine does.
No, the wine does.
Okay, but there you go. So it's a futile effort to put something up there that you'll never enjoy.
So, Stephen, we've been talking a lot about wine and a lot about your experience with wine, and we talked about your early education too. Did you ever have a proclivity for history? Because just from what you've been talking about wine in different countries and, kind of the experience, it seems like wine and history come hand in hand, especially like cultural history too.
Yeah, so if you look at the great wine houses, they've all got a history that dates back to the 1800s. Some of them have great histories, some of them have less histories. there was a blight in the 1800s, early 1800s, called phylloxera, and it's a nematode. And so what this nematode did is it attacked the rootstocks of all of the vines in Europe. So it would live in the soil, and it would be a parasite, and it would feed off the roots of the Vitis vinifera. So the Vitis vinifera is a genus of vines include that we make table wine from. So Cabernet, Chardonnay, Merlot, Grenache, they're all Vitis vinifera. We don't eat those grapes, but because they don't taste good to eat.
Ah, okay.
But they'll make fantastic wine.
Yeah.
So these nematodes, or the phylloxera, what they did is they devastated all of the crops all across Europe. I mean, we went overnight and lost all of their money, lost all of their livelihood because of the phylloxera. So one smart ampelographer, viticulturalist, discovered that if they take the Vitis vinifera and you woodwork it and attach the Vitis vinifera onto American root stock, so Concord, Muscadine, Scuppernong, these are American root stocks.
Yeah.
So they would put the Vitis vinifera, they would attach and grow together, splice the American rootstock on the Vitis vinifera and replant the vineyards in Europe, because the American rootstock was resistant to the nematode.
That is
That
fascinating.
is amazing.
So-
And they give us hell about the discovering the new world.
That's actually fascinating, because one of the things I have been reading up on is American chestnuts recently. And I think most of the American chestnuts faced that blight that wiped them out, but they've been trying to regrow them in, I think, Canada right now. And I believe that they're currently trying to crossbreed them with European chestnuts, and they're having a better time facing that same blight. So kind of like the opposite end almost, yeah.
What do we do with chestnuts? Roast them and eat them? We make stuffing from them? What do we do with them?
Nobody in the South ever ate a chestnut.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that right now.
Nobody in the North ever ate a grit?
Yeah. Isn't that
But you hear about them all.
interesting. Yeah.
You hear about them all the time.
Oh, when I was a kid and they were singing all those songs, I'm like, why don't we ever, all we have are pecans, you know. to
Apparently,
eat.
we just missed them.
Yeah. That's funny. This Spanish wine is delicious.
Well, help yourself.
I'm really blown away by that. I'm also blown away by the fact that they were grafting.
American rootstocks.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really interesting, because growing up, Muscadines and Scuppernongs were, I mean, they're all over the United States, but very Southern, you know, eat them. A lot of people made wine. Frankly, growing up in Charleston, I knew several people that made tomato wine.
Right.
And I tried that a few times recently to the most horrible outcome possible.
We've tried cider a couple of times too.
Yeah, that's
but
just not my
that's
thing.
like bootleg cider, where we're getting like juice from the grocery store.
I don't have that kind of. Have you ever made wine or beer? Do you ever have you ever bothered? It's just
So growing up in Liverpool, and I told you I was disadvantaged and poor.
Yeah.
So a lot of my friends were from Scotland.
Mhm.
Like one of my friends' parents were from Scotland, because when you're in Scotland after the Second World War, you were either a farmer or a fisherman, or you joined the merchant navy. I mean, the GDP of Scotland was tough. So a lot of my friends' parents were Scottish, and they'd be like, "Stephen, would you like a wee dram, laddie?" And I'm like, "Mr. Perry, I'm only 14. He's like, "I didn't ask you your age. Would you like a wee dram?"
right.
So I was drinking Scotch whiskey. I had a proclivity, as you might say, for Scotch whiskey when I was 14. I was drinking whiskey before I knew what a girl looked like naked, DJ. So these Scottish boys would be making their own beer, and they taught me how to brew beer.
Yeah.
So I was brewing beer underneath my in the closet underneath the stairs.
Oh wow!
And my mother was like, "Stephen, you can't be brewing beer. You're only 14. I'm like, "Do you know how much money I've made on the last batch?" But I got suspended from school. for selling it,
Well, you were selling it like in the classrooms or
Well,
outside?
yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
They got onto my racket in the end.
See,
Always enterprising.
Yes.
I like that. You have kept that to this day because aren't you trying to? Oh, go ahead, Devin.
I was about to say, you didn't try selling it to the teachers, did you?
No.
Probably your best customers. Yeah. Probably your best. So you are an enterprising, gregarious young man. And so what are you doing now? I believe you have some kind of, do you have some wine endeavors going now? Or are you Stephen Bates, independent man about town?
Yeah. I think I'm going to redefine my position in the industry moving forward. I think, so Park Circle, we speak about Park Circle because we live in Park Circle,
right.
and we love Park Circle. And there is a sense of community here, and everybody cares about everybody else. So I ended up recently doing you got it?
Yeah. I was offering Madeline a bit of this Spanish sound,
So recently I was approached by some friends and they said, Stephen, we want to do a wine tasting at our house. So I ended up doing a wine tasting for 8 ladies who live in the circle at one of their houses, and it went off quite well. They enjoyed it, and they're going to start their little wine club up, and they call themselves self-proclaimed, self-confessed. I coined the phrase, but they caught onto it and said, we're going to be called the organoleptic ladies.
Oh, wow. That's very clever.
So I've got a group of girls. There's 8 in the group, and they're all friends and neighbors. And I think they want to grow their group. So I'll find out more about that. But I think what I'm going to try and do now is go and find lawyers, doctors, dentists, wine buyers, wine collectors, and become a personal wine consultant to them and sell through Accent on Wine to them.
Dude, you're in the right town.
That's cool. Yeah.
This, it really is. I mean, there is just so much of, I hate to say money, but there's so much money.
What?
And it is a very fussy, discerning crowd that's coming in here.
Yeah. Are you going to be specifically looking at like local, or are you going to be also looking at like, there's a lot of tourism and stuff coming in as well?
I just want to build, I only want a few hundred customers.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Just start with whatever. You've already got a base. You've already started something. You know everything already.
Here's my pitch. So I say to my client, where'd you buy your wine from? And it's the same thing. Total Wine, Costco, bottles, the grocery store. And I'm like, okay, how much do you spend? And it varies. They might say, it's like 15, 20 through the week, 50 on the weekend. And I say to them, this is my pitch, DJ. I say, okay, give me an opportunity to sell wine to you. It'll be the same price, but the quality will be 20% better. And they're like, are you sure? I'm like, well, just try. So that's how I'm winning.
That's awesome.
It is. I think that, oh my God, there's such an advantage to that, even around the holidays and stuff. When people have a cool bottle of wine, even if you don't know about wine, the fact that DJ or somebody could buy a bottle from you, go to Christmas this year, give the story of the Bayard, how do you pronounce it? Bayard. Give that story. And I'm going to tell you, our family's going to be like that kind of confidence in presenting the story. And by the way, the wine's smoking.
Yeah.
That is a good
Also, you have an actual experience.
So we know that Stephen is a wine aficionado, all this other stuff, but he's also a photographer. I came to know that when I had a band in Charleston, and he came, and one evening he did live shots that were fantastic. We used them heavily. Then another time he came in and shot set shots for the Charleston City paper. And of course, the city paper used them because they were fantastic. So one thing that really knocked me out with those, and I know he does other photography, but capturing live performances, especially in the lighting that is every club that a band is ever going to be in, is is really impossible. I mean, scooch up to the mic and let me know how long you been taking pictures? Is this something recent?
I've always had a penchant for photography.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether it's because I'm nostalgic. I don't know what the emotional connection is. I think growing up, you look back on history, DJ, to your point, and you see those old historical photographs from years gone by, and it sparks your imagination.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my God, what must have been life like when this photograph was taken?
Mm-hmm.
So being an avid book reader as a child and you're looking at the photographs, I'm like, photography. So it's always been an interest of mine.
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed the process of photography.
Yeah.
Now we're in the digital age. It's a lot easier. It's a weird analogy, but being a golfer, right? You can go out there and it's a solo sport. You can go out with your friends and you can whack that ball. But if you're a good golfer, you're just a good golfer. And you're only as good. I mean, the clubs help, of course they do, but you're only as good as the golfers that you are yourself as a golfer.
Yeah.
So as photography is, you're only as good as yourself. You're not as good as your gear. I mean, you can have great gear and it helps, but it doesn't make you a better photographer.
No, yeah.
Does that make sense, Devin?
Absolutely.
You need to know about composition and lighting and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, it's some gut feeling as well. It's the musician thing too. I mean, you can have the best guitar in the world, the best amp in the world. It doesn't matter if you can't. I mean, a lot of it's inspiration, right? Being able to capture something. God, photography must be the hardest, though.
It is very hard. Portraiture is intimidating. I've shot a few weddings, but I've never been the main photographer. I've always been the fly on the wall photographer. And my friends are like, oh, Stephen, we really enjoyed your photographs a lot. But it was under no pressure from me because I wasn't getting paid.
Yeah, I imagine,
Right?
being the main cameraman for a wedding would be a lot of pressure.
Yeah, so I don't deem myself professional. However, I think my photographs definitely spark an imagination if you're in the right place, the right time.
Yeah.
Photography is like maybe a lot of artists. You're a musician, for example, and you're interested in your band, and you're being proactive, productive, and you're writing. And then the writer's block comes and it drops off for a while and you're like, oh, the band are doing good, but we're just not into it right now. And you pick it back up again. So my relationship with photography has been lifelong. But I think at this point in my life, if I don't have my camera in my hand for a couple of weeks, I get trigger itchy, unhappy. I'm like, I need my camera. I haven't touched it. It's tactile. It's emotional. But when you make an observation, when you say, well, am I observant? I'm not an observant person. We've established that, Devin and yourself, TJ, we're interested in the music and we love the music and we hear the music and we live vicariously through the music. We listen to, when it comes to the composers, we listen to the music, but we also look at the backstory of what made the composer write the symphony, because we were fascinated, like, what sort of situation historically was the composer in when he wrote that dramatic piece of music. So when you talk about the visual arts, if I have the camera in my hand, it changes my mental state to make me become observant. It makes me look for the opportunity.
Right.
It makes me look for the frame. I don't necessarily always do it when I don't have my camera in my hand, but if I've got my camera close to me, I'm looking for the photographic opportunity. Does that make sense?
No, because it makes total sense, because I mean, what is a picture except trying to capture the moment that you're in right now? So you have to be, on cue for that. Yeah.
So perceptive all the time. I'll ask both of y'all this. Devin's an artist too, and has shown in the Miami Museum of Art. I always want to bring that up. He's done visual arts, digital arts. Stephen, we already know what you do. So if you're good at something and it's artistic, is there a rule that you have to turn it into some monetary reward, or can you just be kick ass and be an enthusiast? Is there ever something that is compelling to make money off of it? Do you have to?
I think art at its core is very meditative, which is a bonus in itself. Like, even if you're not making money, you get almost like in a meditative state when doing certain forms of art. I don't know, Steve.
Yeah, or it could be.
It sounds kind of like that's kind of what you were talking about too, how your mindset changes and kind of focuses on like the now.
Yeah, because like like Devin's saying,
when I do like 3D or sculpture art, that's what I feel.
Right, and you kind of, you never really, you hadn't gone out to, you did it for yourself.
Yeah.
Stephen's now accomplished at shooting cool photographs. Then he's the second at the wedding. Do you feel compelled can do that? Do I need to do that?
I'm a photographer for me.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
That's my question. Yeah. That's what I really want to get at. I mean, if we produce good shit, do we have to do it for a living? So.
Yeah. My friends tell me who are artists and who are successful in their specific businesses. They tell me that my composition is good. My eye for detail is good. So I think that's a vote of confidence.
Yeah.
Am I confident? I don't know. It's because photography is very self-indulgent for me.
Yeah.
And if I can share my photography with people who enjoy it, then I'm happy to do so. I'm not selfish with it.
No, I mean, if it makes you feel any better, I don't think I've ever met a confident artist before.
I know.
But that just might be me.
I guess it's doing that first show, getting it
even after a first show, like, I don't know, people like, artists will like their work, but there's that still like fear that others won't. And I don't know. I think that's always going to be there.
Okay. I have maybe a personal ambition that I would like to share my photography more with people.
Yeah.
Maybe I would. But let's talk briefly about social media.
Yeah.
What about social media? People just are compelled to put everything out there and it becomes banal, white noise and uninteresting.
Mm-hmm.
So the photographs that I take are nostalgic for me and the people who are in my life. And I try to take photographs of them for me because I want to see them when they're not around. I want to make them express themselves in front of the lens for me. So it's very selfish.
Yeah.
It's time. But you're right that the now part and the fact that media now, it is just everybody can spray whatever they have.
Yeah.
I guess when the AI lords destroy all that is known, that pinhole photography is going to be the only thing left after that.
Yeah. Listen, no one is posting on Instagram thinking, man, the composition's really good in this photo. They're just like, oh, I look good.
Yeah. Well, I hate to push it, but we're going to have to wrap up in a sec.
Yeah. Just one final note.
The shop's closed.
For anybody that's listening at this late stage, Devin Dukes is an incredible frontman for his band.
Thank you.
He's 250 pounds of like anger, energy, monstrous communicator, and he's compelling on the stage. And I might say that he's a bona fide rock and roller. So thanks for including me today, Devin.
Oh, to the max. Yeah. We love you to death. And we were glad that we finally got to do this. And this is part of our series of people we like, and we will be continuing this. Stephen, you got anything to plug?
Just one thing. I promise I'll get better. I get criticized for not posting. My close friends criticize me for not posting on Instagram.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start posting on Instagram. So if anyone cares, it's Stephen, Stephen, the numeric 4 wine, WINE, Stephen 4 wine. That's the Instagram. And from there, we'll talk about wine and lead you to the private wine consultancy. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Oh, hell yeah. We'll share
absolutely.
that with you. once again, we want to thank Paradiso Cabana Club for having us. They are our happy home of ambient noise because those are people enjoying this place.
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time and have a great fall. Ciao.
Bye.